Hey everyone, welcome to our first episode of Coffee and Crypto. Today we have two special guests joining us. On my left, this is Rose, also known as Emerald Games. She does a lot of streaming on Twitch, and we'll be sure to have all her handles and information down below so you go check her out. And then we've got Nerd Love Infinity, also known as George. He's been doing a lot of streaming lately with different NFT games and stuff. It's been really exciting to see. He actually got into the NFT gaming space just a little bit behind me. So me and him have really been able to kind of navigate this space together and learn a lot, and it's been really exciting. And I'm just really excited to have these two here, on this episode. So we're going to kind of freeform it. We're just going to talk about a bunch of different topics. We're going to see where it goes. We do have a couple talking points. We want to talk about play to earn, obviously. I want to bring up the Fed raising the interest rates, what that might do to the market. I want to talk about the state of the market. I know we were going to talk a little bit about advertising within play to earn because there's been some stuff that's been coming up with that.
Yeah.
And we'll kind of just see where it goes. So just to kind of kick it off, I wanted to actually ask you guys, because you've been playing Meta Ops. You just got into that recently.
Yes.
And
Very
I haven't even
exciting.
had a chance to see any kind of gameplay or what's going on, but looking at all your guys' tweets, you seem pretty excited about it. So why don't you give me kind of like a quick intro rundown on what it is and what you're enjoying about it so far?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's actually a project, funny enough, that I had my eye on a while ago when I first got into this space, when I was just going down lists of game names and going, that seems cool, and just kind of going down rabbit holes. And I remember the reason why I did not end up really looking, why I ended up leaving their Discord at first was because they were in their older model. They actually had an older model for their game that was going to be doing Immutable X. They actually, did a little bit of part way through their development. They found out their API and their gameplay system they were planning to have, and having their integration within the game of all their sales and stuff like that in their game wasn't going to work with Immutable X. So they were like, okay, we need to come up with a new plan. So they actually completely reformed themselves, built a game in Unity on Solana, and now ever since they've done that, it's a totally new thriving environment there. So we just minted some PFP NFTs, and basically that's kind of your ticket to access to getting to play the beta version of their game. They've got one fully fledged deathmatch type of map, like a really big one with a lot of worst timing in the world.
It's okay. I
Yeah.
was also wondering, is the camera in your face? Maybe move that, or not the camera, the mic. Maybe let's move that a little bit over. There we go. Well,
Yeah.
I noticed she changed her. You guys both changed your Twitter profiles to that. So is that what that is? The NFTs that
Yes.
you guys purchased? Okay.
You get the helmet, and then once the game drops in Q3 or Q4, you'll get the whole mech suit that matches your helmet.
Yeah, I believe they call that an exo mod, but basically the way those helmets look in our profile pics, right now we're just red soldier, blue soldier in terms of our face shield mask. That's how you tell what team you're on. But
Okay.
in the future, the guys will all have the people with the profile pics will have the actual dude that looks like our dude kind of a
Do
thing.
you mind
that
if
we
I ask what
purchased.
the entry cost was to get those?
Yeah.
Mine was about $50 CAD,
Okay.
and they're still pretty low for the uncommon. I got quite lucky. Mine's an uncommon, and I got it for 0.4 soul.
Okay.
No, 0.58.
0.58 soul.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I was really, really lucky. I happened to be just peeking at Fractal late at night before I went to bed to take a look at some of the ones that I was maybe going to purchase, and I found one that was a rare for 0.45 when the floor price was a little bit higher than that, so I actually just scooped that right away. And had a little silly happy face on it for me, so that made me laugh. And yeah, there's a lot of real cool variation there. The main reason I liked this project now is that they have a focus on gameplay.
Okay.
They have a proof of concept product that is fun to play. Plays like Call of Duty basically is probably my best. Call of Duty and Counter-Strike Go is probably the two biggest.
Well, and we know
Inspirations.
first-person shooters, that genre in itself, the moment someone does it right in the NFT space. And there's a lot
It's
of
taken
projects.
over esports
Yeah.
completely.
Think about Call of Duty, Counter-Strike, Apex Legends,
Fortnite.
There's so many.
Overwatch.
The list goes on.
There is, but I've seen a lot of other projects, and Gunzilla was another one that I was looking into. Crypto Walkers kind of has this, first-person shooter aspect to it, and there's a lot of them kind of emerging, but there's probably only going to be a few at the end of the day that really do it right,
Yeah.
or whatnot. So yeah, I'm definitely going to check that out. It looks
Like
very
I said, the
interesting.
reason that I was really bullish about it was because not only was the entry cost reasonable for somebody to go and try it out, but they are having tournaments regularly. which they are actually paying out in Solana. They're working with a lot of partnerships with game guilds and other different spaces, T discords and things. To
Oh, do you want to tell me about the Game Guild thing? Because maybe we could do something like that, right? With
yeah,
Motion
I
Games Guild.
mean,
How does that work?
yeah, I haven't really asked them about that
Okay.
much, but I have noticed that they've worked with game guilds and had game guilds. I think even paying out some of the money for some of their 2v2 deathmatch tournaments
Okay.
and things like that.
Oh, so maybe the
And
Game Guild and like puts
hosts
up
it
the prize.
basically, and yeah, they're
Kinda like a
basically
sponsor.
sponsoring the tournament
Okay.
kind of a thing. So what I like is that they're not just relying on just what they've used for their treasury pool to kind of like pay things out. They're like they're working with other communities, building those communities, and also working that into an incentive for us to play.
That's really smart because then
Yeah.
they're not necessarily getting all the prize pool and having to come up with all the money. They're allowing other guilds
Yeah.
and stuff to come in. I like that idea.
I'm noticing that there's like two kind of avenues people are going. They're either leading with gameplay and then letting the liquidity and tokenomics sort itself out once the gameplay releases happen, or they're leading with a concept and then they're trying to get the funding to get the gameplay out of that. And I really find that leading with the gameplay and showing that you have a fun game to play is really important first.
I think so too.
For the longevity of it. If you want a
Because otherwise, it just
long-lasting
kind of
project.
promises and thin air. Like you're
Yeah,
just
and
kind
you're
of
just
saying,
like
yeah, it's
waiting,
going to
you're
be
waiting
great.
for
Well,
that
where
next
is it?
moment to get on the roadmap, that next point, instead of like being able to play the game until that next point.
Mm-hmm.
And then you guys got a chance to play a bit. What was the fun factor like? Was there anything that you kind of you think they could improve? Like just trying to be the critic for a second.
The only thing that I had an issue with was right now there's no real controller capabilities.
Oh, you got to use
And-
WASD?
We have to use MNK right now.
Okay.
Now that
and
was only because of a short-term issue they were already fixing.
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
we got to actually play some games with the devs and the founder. They did like a on Discord call. Was it a Discord call we were in?
Well, no, what they do is they do community gaming nights where they just host
Oh,
they
okay.
just host a giant 12v12 deathmatch room. Anybody who's on the server and has a PFP can join in and play, and you can play with the devs and hang out. That's what we did. We just went and started hanging out, and they're asking us, are you guys day oneers? We're like, yeah, we're just checking out the game, trying to play it.
And
It honestly
when-
reminded me of playing CS:GO.
And you know what? I think that's what's really cool about this space in general. I don't remember ever, as a traditional gamer, being able to play with a development team in my entire life.
Yeah.
Like, no game growing up throughout my whole life have I ever been like, yeah, I played with the group of the guys who were designing. But it seems so common in this space where the development teams and the teams, they want to be active in the community. And I don't know about me, but that just makes me fangirl sometimes.
It is, and
Yeah.
it made me more bullish on the project because they were like, yeah, no, it was working with controller fine. Then they updated, and earlier that day, Nerdlove was talking to one of the devs, and he was like, yeah, I actually went out today and bought a PS5 controller because I'm gonna figure this out.
Yeah, because I told them that I was having an issue with PS5 controller support. It was giving me some weird issue where I was just trailing up, and they were like, you know what? We just upgraded our framework of the game from Unity 2020 to Unity 2021, and just that change in software update it just gibbed all of our controllers. Like, controllers have been working this whole time, so they were assuring us this isn't like how it's been, and nobody's been able to use controllers. It's only M&K. They immediately responded, and they were like, we actually went and bought a PS5 controller to figure out why is this not
Yeah.
compatible. They were already working on it, so
But I mean,
it was
even
great,
games like
yeah.
Apex, whenever they have an update, a new map, a new legend, there's an array of issues that
Always.
happen: audio issues, music issues. It's crazy.
yeah. And
Well, that's cool. I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. I'll definitely
Mhm.
be sure to check it out. Kind of leads me into my next topic, which is just talking about kind of the state of play to earn and where a lot of games are. I know a lot of people right now are kind of concerned, just in general. Taking a look at games like Axie Infinity and even a lot of the Wax games, there's been a lot of liquidity that has really left kind of the system, and a lot of people are feeling like play to earn is kind of dead. That's the media FUD that's going on there.
yeah, that's definitely not the case, but it definitely I understand why people would think that.
I think there's a lot of factors. I mean, me personally, and of course, nothing we say here is financial advice in
Yeah.
any way. This is just our opinion, and our opinion is just our opinion. Might not even be factual. Axie, there's really this kind of play to survive aspect, where the whole point of playing the game is to extract money.
Yes.
And I feel like there's a big issue with that model, because if you're not incentivizing people to put more and continue to feed that ecosystem, if you don't have new money coming in, it's going to be hard to get money to come out. right? So
Yeah.
you need this liquidity constantly going in order to come out, but people are just playing the game to make a living. You need that fun factor. And,
Yeah.
and also I think the thing that a lot of people are forgetting is the whole play to earn space is very new. Like the technology to even do this, I've been saying a year and a half. Axie's been around for 3 years, but really the tokenomics and actually being able to earn and all
True
that is really
GameFi,
like
yeah.
kind of only
Yeah.
a year and a half old. So companies are just trying to figure shit out,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
so I don't think it's dead. I just think the state of the market. I mean, look at what happened to Bitcoin, Ethereum. That's going to have ripple effects on.
It's still in its infancy. There's still a lot of growing pains that need to happen.
Yeah.
But if you want to look at something that a lot of people when it first came around thought it wasn't gonna survive, the internet.
That's true. Yeah.
Well, if you even look into like mainstream gaming, I mean, Final Fantasy is called Final Fantasy because they were literally putting all their eggs in the last basket they had
Yeah.
because they were a game developer that had no more money left and no investors angeling them. So they were just like, this is the Final Fantasy we can make, and hey, they succeeded, right? But that's where some of these spaces are going to get, and I mean, I've noticed that with some. Some of these early projects that they had a really good financial model that was making people a lot of money, but they weren't necessarily a very fun game.
Yep.
Some of them I'm noticing now, everybody's flooded with new things they've breeded and new money that they've created in game, and there's nowhere to go with it. And it's and then that, once they reach that wall in terms of the developers, they're now like fighting to like come up with a new fun update to keep everybody interested enough, whereas it should be fun to begin with, and I'm really
Yeah.
starting to think about when I make investments in these kinds of games now, if I wasn't making any money off of this, would I still have had the same level of fun that like, going out to, your regular, wherever it is that you go and buy your regular video games and paying $80 in my case Canadian for like a disc game, would I get that same AAA fun value? Because that's what you're doing when you buy a regular game.
Yep.
You're just paying for the fun you're extracting out of it. So, I feel like if you're designing a game, showing gameplay first that's fun on that level, and people feel like, hey, even if I wasn't earning from this, I would enjoy this, and then they find out, hey, on top of that, you are going to earn later down the road, then I think that's probably more.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I've been thinking about this a lot. Like most games have a shelf life, right? And we know some of the best games, most popular, like World of Warcraft, managed to make it a decade, and people are still playing.
Yeah.
But it makes me think: do you want to just maybe play a game for 6 months and then get out? Like, do you want to kind of where's that balance between I'm enjoying the game and this is also an investment? Because for most people, if you put thousands of dollars into a game, you're in. Like you're well invested now. I almost wonder if it's gonna kind of make people hang on too long when it might be smarter to get out sooner. And what's that shift going to look like with all these new titles that are coming out? It's going to be a really interesting dynamic.
Agreed.
Right?
Yeah.
But then certain games like Star Atlas, which seems to just have this grandiose vision, seems like something that I would probably be interested sticking around with for a long time because they're talking about making this entire metaverse,
Yeah.
and it's something that people can work and earn a living in.
Yeah, well, I mean, she plays Apex. I mean, she's been playing, how long have you been playing in terms
Since
of
season
seasons?
1,
Okay.
And it is
Season
now on
one.
season
13
Wow.
13. So think about that. That's 12 seasons worth
or
of
12.
How
Going
long is
into
the season?
12.
Yeah.
Roughly.
I think there's.
Couple months? Is
12
it a
weeks.
quarter? 12 weeks. Okay, it's a weekly thing.
I think it's every
12 weeks. So that's basically
Okay.
a 3-month season, right? Times.
Yeah.
So that's several
Generally,
years,
Makes sense.
right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of think of your GameFi investments, I think, that way. If
Okay.
you're going to be spending $1,000 on an investment in a game, think of it like you've been playing 6 years worth of seasons of that game and you're paying for all the content for that 6 seasons of that game now.
I see.
Right?
Okay.
If you're wanting to play a game where you just want to have some fun for $80, then, I think there should be two kinds of, that seems to be the two approaches. Either take a ton of money right off the bat, and then that basically is, allowing to pay for the whole roadmap, or take a small amount of money at first, lead with some fun gameplay, and then add a new stage with new NFTs, new wave of NFTs, add with new gameplay, and compile. I don't know which way is the better way to
Yeah,
go,
me
but
neither,
I've
but
seen
it's-
both those approaches.
I like that, and it's interesting to think about it because one thing I'm noticing too, talking to a lot of friends and family and people who are new to this space, it seems like entering through GameFi into crypto is way simpler than entering into buying cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
That's just kind of what I'm noticing. I'm picking up, an NFT, I can buy this thing, and this thing does something for me, or it lets me play the game, or like I'm noticing that it's easier for people to connect the dots rather than wait, I got to go to an exchange and I got to do this and then I'm buying this thing and I'm just holding it. When do I sell it? And then there's this huge investment conversation that comes up.
Yeah.
Whereas with
exactly.
an NFT, it's like you want to play the game,
Yeah.
go buy the
Think
thing.
of this like
Yeah.
your digital, like, you know, the way I like to think about it with a lot of them, especially the ones like what we entered with MetaOps, where it's
Mhm.
like, you know, you paid like, you know, half a soul type of thing to get an NFT, kind of a ticket of entry. You know, that's like a way more approachable way to test your foot in the water, and then, you know, they can follow up with that bigger liquidity gaining thing that's
Yes.
kind of your season pass, you know, because then you'll have already played a proof of concept and enjoyed it. you
Yeah.
know?
Well, that actually brings me kind of full circle around to the next thing I want to talk about, which
Mhm.
is some of the advertising opportunities
Yeah.
that games are presenting. You showed me a picture in particular about Metagear that had a little banner. And I was really excited about Metagear when I first looked into it because I can't remember the name of the advertising company, but they were
Yeah.
right in their white paper. They said they were working with an advertising company that was going to create a decentralized platform. Now, I've got my doubts about that.
Yeah.
It sounds great on paper. Decentralized ad platform, it pays the people viewing the ads. You can control the ads you're seeing, say if you're interested or not. But I suspect when they try to launch it, the money, the incentive is going to be so
I feel
good,
like
they're
it's
not
going to
want to
more
give
like
it.
a Web
Yeah.
2 kind of a model,
I
where
think
it's
so
just going
as
to be
well.
like really. I feel like at first the incentive
I
to
would love
get
if it
people
wasn't
to
that.
advertise on those slots, because I'm noticing that they're the sizes that I see on AdSense on web pages and on things
Yeah.
that I'm scrolling on my apps and stuff like that, like those googly sizes and stuff. Like they're just, yeah, they are clearly like they're gonna repeat a lot, and the way they get incentive for that is gonna be, you know, give a percentage to the people whose ad they're putting out, and then they're gonna keep a percentage for their own
See, that
liquidity
would be
pool,
nice.
which I don't think is a bad idea, because I mean, if you think about it, if you gave a cut of your ad revenue to yourself to help fund the rewards you're giving to your player base, then you're not keeping everything to yourself. It's kind of an operational cost
Yeah.
that's helping fund the liquidity of your system. I think that would be the way to go with an ad network type of thing. I don't know how they're actually doing it, but
Well, they talked about fully decentralized, where it would
Were
go
they
back
giving
to
it
the
to the
users, and there was a small percentage, like 5% for operational fees to like run the platform that lets people bid for the ads or something
Yeah.
like that. But I think what we're all kind of, I don't want to say scared of, but everyone wants to avoid the Ready Player One ad
Yes.
experience. Where it
Yeah.
takes over your whole vision and it's just nothing but ads. But I
Yeah.
think that's what gets me excited about Web3. One of the main things that gets me really excited about Web3 is the ability to control our own data now.
Yes.
You know, so that we can actually sell our search history or our data or whatever, not all these giant tech companies that are basically taking all of our information, you know, and selling it without saying any kind of names. Like, you know, most of the pictures we have, those are being sold for biometric scan data. Our mics are being listened to, all our search history, everything we do. It's like actually worth more than oil.
Oh yeah, well,
Which
there's
is
a
crazy.
reason why you can have a conversation with your friend about, hey, I feel like having Chinese tonight, and all of a sudden you're gonna get like 6 restaurants,
That's
all
right.
within 5 kilometers of you.
And the value of that per information is, I can't remember where I seen this, so don't quote me on it, but I remember them comparing it to being more expensive than oil. Now, this was like 6 months ago, a year ago. I know oil's getting really expensive right now, so maybe it's a
100%.
little different.
Well,
But the fact that
scarcity.
we could sell that, yeah, the fact that we could sell that would be amazing. Like, I think, what if someone could make a couple $100 a month selling their data? And what if they lived in Sri Lanka or Indonesia or the Philippines?
where that means
a
meaningful
lot,
amount.
a
Yeah.
meaningful amount, and it's data that companies actually want. That to me would create a much better relationship. I know as a consumer, I'd be happy to see ads if I know they were relevant to me and I was getting a piece of it. And if I didn't want to see the ads, I could just turn it off and I wouldn't get the piece.
Yeah, that almost
Yeah.
seems like that's almost like green energy. That's like green advertising to me. Like that's like the cleanest way I can think of to
Me too.
monetize attention in the least scummy sounding way to me as the consumer.
Be the most effective.
I think so too, because then everyone's kind of on the same page. Where right now advertising feels very sleazy or people don't understand. Like nobody reads that terms of service when you sign up
No.
for things.
Most people think they're being followed, and they're like, "How does my phone know what I'm saying?"
But if you actually read it, it's in.
You're
the
giving it
terms of
permission to
service.
record and listen and to give that information
That's
to
right.
to
So if it was
pools.
if people were transparent about that and we could all earn from it, I just think it would make a much better experience and it would help onboard people. Because I see a way to get people from Web 2 to Web 3 is to solve some of the Web 2 problems. And when you solve those issues and the things that people aren't a fan of, it's going to make it a lot more easy to onboard. Like, wait, I can get paid to see ads?
Yeah,
Why wouldn't
that
I
alone
do that?
ruffles a lot of
Right.
brains and gives a lot more incentive.
I think
That's
so
how I
too.
also feel about GameFi, because I know so many people who have spent thousands over the years on skins and packs
Yeah.
and stuff. It's like, why don't you spend that on one NFT that's gonna then yield you?
Right?
You
That-
spend it anyway. Why not spend
Why
it on
not
something
spend
that's
it on
gonna
something
work
that's
for
actually
you?
going to work for you? Yeah, and I think that's why games to me are probably one of the most exciting onboarding capabilities for crypto,
Yeah,
because it's a certain our generation and
So
younger.
comfortable with it.
it's an interface we're familiar
Exactly,
with,
so
yeah.
comfortable with it. We're used to spending money on games.
We started with having to turn to the channel to 3.
Right. But now we can, like, I think about leaving a game too. I've had
Mm-hmm.
some games that I've played for years and years and put more money into than I'd like to admit.
Yes.
Having the ability to exit and take that into my next venture
That's another
is
thing
amazing.
too, yeah.
That's like owning a
Even
home.
part of it.
Yeah, it's like
Right?
imagine owning a home and then when you leave the home, you got to give up all the value. Why would
Yeah.
why would anyone do that? Maybe home's not the best comparison. Maybe
Or
a
like
car
spending,
is a little bit more.
or like
accurate,
spending
but-
hundreds of dollars on like the first few updates of a game that you like, and then a new update comes out and it just ruins the whole meta and you've quit. Like to me, that's the equivalent of getting wrecked
Yeah.
in gaming.
Yeah.
Like that's really what that feels like to me. You've overspent and overcommitted, and then you now got a version of the product you don't like, and you can't even pull any of that out of that. At least if you like got like half wrecked on a game you sort of overinvested a bit on in Web 3, and you decided this really wasn't for me, you can at least liquidate some of those assets, maybe flip some of the currencies, and then go and try and put it into something you believe in more.
Yes.
Like you know, even when you try and trade your games back in to like some of the major retailers,
You get
you're
enough.
lucky to get half the value of it, even when it's 15 days old.
Or
You know, I know definitely lots of profile picture mints and all different kinds of projects in Web3 that you have a way bigger shelf life and, you know, resale value you're going to get back out of that. So, I mean, that's what I was saying earlier when you make an investment in these games, think about that dollar value in terms of normal gaming. If you're spending
Yes.
$1,000, like, that like to me means you think you're gonna like this game, all 7 of the DLCs of it, every single thing they're ever gonna do. Otherwise, if you don't think you're gonna like it that much, don't put $1,000 in there.
That's a good point.
IMO.
Well, it makes me think about, and this is a little bit of a controversial topic, but
Yeah.
like microtransactions,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't think I've ran into a single person who was like, yeah, I like microtransactions. They did great for mobile.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they created some of the biggest gaming companies in the world.
Yes.
Right? They played on people's dopamine. There's a whole psychological
Yep.
argument for it.
Mhm.
I've had many games where they've gotten me too. Like there's been a few games where I've spent $500 in the first 24 hours, and I literally had to just delete the game because I'm like, okay, this was.
This is too much.
Holy
It's
crap,
taking
what did I
following me
just
blind.
do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But
was-
now, if I could extract some of that value back, I don't think I would mind microtransactions. Maybe I wouldn't get the full 500. Maybe I could exit for 400. But
And this
now I
is-
wouldn't feel like I did something wrong, because that's what it was. If I feel almost guilt when I'm trapped in that kind of, okay, yeah, let's get a little further in the game, let's get a
Yeah.
little further, and I have to stop myself, and like now I need conviction, and I feel like that's playing into the addictive tendencies of people, and I do
Oh,
see some
definitely.
psychological issues with that. But put it in the GameFi space with NFTs,
Yeah.
I'm okay with it.
There was a
I
game
don't
that I
see an
saw.
issue.
I
Mhm.
can't remember which one it was, but it was a game that was popular with women, and there was science behind that because it was a game where you're just like flicking things
Mhm.
past stuff like it's that motion, and they figured out through studies that women get a dopamine release when they're on Instagram or Pinterest
From
and they're doing
swiping
that
up or
from
right?
that swiping.
Okay.
And so
Wow.
the game's mechanics is all based around like you swiping in that kind of emotion.
See, that makes
And
sense.
it's
Wow.
so popular with women because
Right.
our
Well, that's like
brains are
opening-
wired that way.
Opening chests, getting
Yep.
the random loot boxes, all the flashy signs, all the little
Yeah.
sounds, like just like the online casinos with the spinning sounds and the
Yep.
gems and all that stuff. Like, I'll admit it, it's satisfying.
Mhm.
I love opening loot boxes. I always have
Yep.
in games. It's exciting, that random chance to get something. But when that loot box is $20 a piece, all of a sudden you're like, wait, I gotta buy groceries.
Yeah.
I gotta be careful here. You know, I can't do this.
Definitely,
It's
yeah.
easy
But
to
think
fall
about
down
it
the
with an
rabbit hole.
NFT. What if you had a chance to get $1,000 NFT? Maybe it was only a 0.1% chance, but maybe once a week you could open a random loot box,
Right,
and
yeah.
and hey, you get a major payout in
Yeah.
a week, a couple weeks, or a month. I'd be more inclined to buy the loot boxes
Right.
because I'd feel like I'd actually get something back.
Yeah.
That's why I'm excited to mint with MetaOz, because I won't disclose how much money I've spent on Apex, but it's definitely a lot more than what I'll spend
Well-
on MetaOps, and I'll get way more back from that.
And that's
game.
why I really like that, like, that ticket of entry NFT idea, where it's really like, okay, pay a modest amount, and then you get a ticket of entry to this chunk of our content, and then if you like more, we'll release more small NFT collections that keep funding us doing more seasons of what you like.
Yeah.
Right? And then eventually you'll have this thriving system that's 13 seasons long with partnerships,
Right.
guilds, all this other liquidity will be coming in from external sources. But leading with gameplay and then going with, if you want more NFTs.
I do like
right?
that model.
I like that model more.
Same.
That is like microtransactions, but
It
sort
is.
of macro transactions, right? They're not $2, they're like, 0.5 Sol or 1.5 Sol.
Which is reasonable.
But you start with something reasonable, work up to the less reasonable, and then the people who are that interested will go in there. Right?
Now I realize we're gonna have to do more of these because we're almost out of time already, and I
Yeah.
didn't
No
even get
way.
to some of the other topics
Our
that we
time
wanted to
flies.
talk about. I think one thing I want to end it on here is something that's kind of on everybody's mind a little bit, but not a lot of people know much about it. So I just wanted to talk about the Fed raising interest rates and what that
Yes,
means for the
super
market
important.
and what's really going to go on there. Now I'm not an expert on it by any means.
Neither am I.
But typically, what happens is this is the way that they combat inflation. So they increase the interest rates at which banks can borrow, or people can borrow, businesses can borrow, which in turn means there's less, right?
Yeah, people are saving.
And when you look at any traditional investment portfolio, or you talk to any investor and you ask them about that, people want to get out of the markets generally. And you can kind of see what happened with Bitcoin and Ethereum, a lot of the altcoins over the past couple months when this talk has been coming up. If that does happen, I feel like the next couple months might be some of the best times to get involved in some of these play to earn and GameFi games, because maybe the market will crash or get really low. But
Absolutely.
that's when we can enter. And now it's going to be a little easier to get involved. Now it might be harder on the game development companies. It
True.
might be harder on the market. There's going to be a lot of FUD. People are going to be scared. People are going to feel like they lost their money or their investment.
Yeah, consumers are going to have patience and faith in the projects that they've
That's
right.
right.
put their faith
But then
in.
it's going to show the conviction. The people who actually have the conviction are going to be the ones, in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, are going to be rewarded. Because if we can
100%.
make it through this and let the world economy or whatever reset, and then things start to recover, but we got in at a nice low level, there's actually an opportunity to do well.
Yep.
So I'm going to be looking really closely at a lot of play to earn titles over these next couple
Definitely.
months.
As far as I'm concerned, if they are telling you that they're going to raise interest rates pretty much the day they tell you that, that's your signal to go, okay, do not overinvest, over research.
That's
Because you want to now go, okay, well, I know this fall is coming, and not to mention the space has a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of kind of negative sentiment around GameFi right now too. So that will work in your favor. That plus a crash
I think so,
means
too.
buying time. So now is the time to research hard so that you know the thing you're getting into, is going to be the thing that wins out of the 100 that are going to fail. It's going to be the one that wins. This is the time to over research,
I think so too.
right? As opposed to overcommit and overinvest.
Well, thanks so much for joining me, guys.
Thanks
for
This
having
has
us.
been a ton of fun.
Gotta do this
and
again.
now I'm just excited for the next couple
Yes.
that we're
Me
going to
too.
be doing. And thank you all for joining us today for our first episode of Coffee and Crypto. Like I said, we've got Emerald Games and Nerd Love Infinity. All their information is going to be down below. Make sure you follow them, all that great stuff. And of course, we're going to have them on for future episodes. So thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.